I'm just going to go over this, and the first, before I get started and listening to Peter, the one thing that struck me is right off the hop when Peter said land use planning as if agriculture matters. That's what this is all about, and that's so important. And this little organization I'm involved in. Our biggest problem is to make people, and I think there's a whole bunch of you in here, local politicians, provincial politicians, understand that within our communities and with our community boundaries, agriculture is important to our success and important to the way we all grow and prosper. So right off the hop, I just want to, this is the only thing I'll read, but it's, I think, very important. And that's the ALR, the Land Reserve, exists precisely because British Columbia has long recognized that if agricultural land were to succumb every time anyone proposed a development on particular land that proponents and politicians viewed on an ad hoc basis as being more economically favorable than the current use of that land, expedient and even short-sighted decisions would often follow, to the long-term detriment of the province's agricultural land base. Our commission exists precisely to prevent the British Columbia public waking up one day and asking, what happened to our agricultural land? And we don't have much of it. This dynamic is precisely what an act dealing with less than 5% of the provincial land base was intended to avoid, and is precisely why an independent commission was created. Rather than basing decisions on the politically expedient, the crisis of the day, or short-term profit that sacrifice agricultural land forever, an independent commission's task is to make its decisions in a principled fashion, in a fair process that reflects coherent agricultural policy and planning, and which reflects the purposes set out in the Act, and that is to preserve agricultural land. And that's a message I gave to the people of the province of BC not long ago. And we've got some interesting things happening back home right now. Now, the purposes of our Act are, and these are where we make our decisions, is to preserve agricultural land. That's number one. Second is to encourage farming. And third is to encourage local governments, First Nations, and its agents to enable and accommodate farm use of agricultural land and uses compatible with agriculture in their plans, bylaws, and policies, something that's not always easily done. Now, just so you understand, there's the Agricultural Land Reserve, and that's the zone where agriculture is priority or use. And those lands are designated under the Act. And then there's the Commission, and that's the body appointed of appointed individuals and staff who administer the boundaries, subdivision, and non-farm uses within that Act. Oh, I forgot to do something. This is way too complicated for me. And why was the ALC established? We've got a limited amount of supply in our province. 1.1% is prime agricultural land in our province, and that's basically located in the Okanagan Valleys, the Fraser Valleys, and Vancouver Island. Throughout the rest of the province, there's lots of prime land, and we will find the most of it. About 49% of all our agricultural land is up in the Peace River, and it's under tremendous pressure. When the Act was brought in, we were losing approximately 6,000 hectares a year to a rapidly expanding population, and we had public concern, and we had a regional planning impetus that needed to be undertaken because things were happening different ways by different people, and there had to be some order put in the system. And just so you know, I've lived this act. I was in my mid to late, I guess, late 20s when this act was brought in. A farm family that was heavily involved in agriculture, and when this act came in, it was a huge issue in our province. And I was one of those standing on the legislative lawns in Victoria saying, how do you dare do this? And I'm not sure why I was there. But you have to understand, my family emigrated from overseas. I think they got out just ahead of Stellan, getting a whole, so all of this, yeah, it was a communist plot, according to my parents, so I happened to be there. But after we thought about it, around our kitchen table and dinners and so on and so forth, we had some very, very, very interesting discussions. And frankly, after the 40 years that it's been in place, you're looking at someone that has prospered hugely by keeping agricultural land. Now, it's a finite resource in our province. I'll catch up. Don't worry here. There's only 4.6 million hectares in the province, and that's 5% of our land. And we deal with it and identify it through the Canada Land Inventory. And it can't be rezoned. Once it's in, it's in. And of course, they're not making any more, and if you want to take anything out, you've got to come to us. And there it is, different parts of the province. And of that 4.7 million hectares, we're going through a complete review of our boundaries. And there's, within this 4.7 million, that includes roads, train tracks, airports, First Nations lands, rivers, lakes. So we think the 4.7 million is substantially inflated when you take that area out, and that's what we're doing. We're doing a complete boundary review. This boundary was put in place back in the 70s. New technology and so forth is allowing us to do a much more finite, have a much more finite look at this, and there you go. That's the purple, of course, is the total land in the province. The yellow is the 5%. 2.7 is good for a broad range of crops, or more along the cattle and that sort of thing in the central interior. And then our prime land, the 1.1%, is that skinny little bunch down below. And of course, here is how we put this thing all together. The bottom lands are your prime, and as you go up the hills and the valleys and get to the 7, that's up on the top of the mountains. You can't do much with that. But don't get too hung up on the 1 to 7 rating. Those of you that have been to the Okanagan will notice the tree, fruit, and grape industry. Those crops do not like 1, 2, and 3. They like the 4, 5, and 6. They want the light soils that you can add water to and feed, and that's what makes the beautiful fruit and the great grapes. And the worse the soil, the better the wine. And I've tested that theory, and it does work. It does work. We've got a wonderful porch on our house, and underneath it is one of the best cellars that you'll ever come across. So if you're in town, come on and see us. And then in the Fraser Valley, we've got probably one of the largest cranberry operations in the world, and that's all on Class 5 and 6 land. And there you go. So you know, we all get hung up. We get folks coming to us, well, I'm sitting on 4 or 5 lands. I can't do anything with it. Well, my answer, it's not our official answer, but my answer is if you put your head down, your ass in the air, and start working, you probably could make it go. But, you know, that's not something that my political masters like to hear. So here's the commission, and that's us. We're appointed by government. There's from 7 to 18, depending on the day of the week. We've got regional representation from around the province. We make our decisions on applications to include, exclude land, include land, subdivisions within the agricultural community, and non-farm uses. We determine the ALR boundary. As I said, we're going through, and we've done, in our lifetime, approximately 40,000 applications that we've made judgments on, and that also helps determine the boundary. I've recommended that's not a very good way of refining that boundary. I think it should be done far more scientifically, and that's what we're doing. And we also ensure local government land use planning is compatible with agricultural use of ALR lands. And we try to develop a policy that encourages agriculture. And as far as local governments are concerned, and those that are here in the room, we deal with about 158 local governments within the province that have ALR land within their boundaries. And some of those municipalities have in excess of 75 to 80% of the ALR boundary. So growth within their municipalities requires a good working relationship between them and us. And we work very closely with local governments, and some more than others. And we're trying, as of late, to encourage them, rather than look at agricultural land as the first place to grow, we're suggesting it should be the last. Look at other options. Look at all the other options you have, and if we come down to the fact that there just aren't any, then we'll talk to you. But don't come to us, because it's been I shouldn't say it, but I think we've all taken the easy route. And if it's flat, it's got water, it's easy to put roads on, let's build on it. And if you come to BC now, you'll start to see that's not the case any longer. We're going up to the hillsides. We're using pieces that aren't available or aren't good ag land. And I'm just going to go through here very quickly, and this is the purpose of our ALC is we're an administrative tribunal. I think that's important. We're part of the justice system. We're at arm's length to government, and decisions we make are part of the justice system, and if you want to appeal them, you appeal them through the justice system. And I think I'll just point out the last one there. Rarely do we make a decision that pleases everyone. In my time, we haven't made one. If we do, it's going up on the wall. And if you have to feed your family and be in my position, don't do it. The pressures are enormous on this little organization for all the reasons we've talked about. It's taking, Peter, what you've suggested and trying to make it work. And this is the types of applications we get: inclusion, exclusion. Those are both very difficult ones, and then subdivisions within the ALR, non-farm uses, and that would be things like oil and gas issues, mines, lumber mills, that sort of things. People want to park their trucks on agricultural land in the Fraser Valley, and they buy 10 acres and put 50 trucks on there, and well, it's just part of me making a living farming, I guess so. And this is how the process works. An application comes to us. It's submitted then to the regional government or local governments. Local governments have a look at it. They've got an opportunity to either say yes or no. If they say yes, it should go on to the Land Commission. They can refuse it, and it ends there. From the local government comes to us. We do all the information, the research, summary, the reports, and then we meet on site with the applicants and then bring the decision back to our board meetings and make those decisions there, and they are quite interesting, some of those. And some of the considerations we go through, we have the land resources, the potential, what is it? Do we need it? Will it impact adjacent parcels? We go through the capability ratings, of course, but then suitability comes in. The agricultural concerns, does the proposal benefit, support agriculture? That's a huge one because our job is to be on behalf of agriculture, and so on and so forth. And the concerns are not to, Peter, your suggestion that speculation comes, you buy a piece of agricultural land and you're sitting and waiting for the municipality to grow or other things to happen. I put a policy in place that says just because you own a piece of agricultural land doesn't make you a farmer. There's a lot else that goes into it. So there you go, and I could go on forever, but I far prefer to chat with you. And my grandfather used to say that once in your life you need a doctor, a lawyer, a preacher, but every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer. There you go. Thank you.